Alexander Crowe was a man whose name alone could make grown adults nervous. In the business world, he was known as a genius, a man who built a billion-dollar empire from nothing. But behind the success, behind the tall glass buildings and powerful boardrooms, there was another truth everyone whispered about. Alexander Crowe was furious, unpredictable, and impossible to please. No one stayed working for him for long, and those who did never smiled. He lived in a massive mansion on the edge of the city, far from noise and people. The house was beautiful, but it felt cold, almost empty. Every room looked perfect, yet there was no warmth in it. The walls were clean, the floors shined, but the air felt heavy. People believed the house reflected the man who lived in it. Rich, powerful, and completely alone. Alexander woke up every morning before sunrise. He didn't need an alarm because sleep rarely stayed with him for long. His days were strict and controlled. Breakfast had to be on the table at exactly 7. The newspaper had to be folded the same way every day. If anything was out of place, even slightly, his anger would explode. Staff members learned this quickly, and many quit without saying goodbye. In his company offices, it was the same story. Assistants changed every month. Managers lasted weeks. Some employees cried in the bathrooms, some walked out in the middle of the day, and others simply disappeared. Alexander never asked where they went. He never cared. In his eyes, people were either useful or weak, and he had no patience for weakness. No one knew exactly why he was like this. Some said he was born angry. Others believed money had turned him cold. But those who had been around him the longest knew there was something deeper. His anger was not just anger. It was pain, locked tightly inside him, like a storm waiting to break free. Years ago, Alexander had been a different man. People who remembered him from his younger days spoke of his smile, his kindness, and his big dreams. But that man disappeared the night his life fell apart. A tragic accident took away the people he loved most. After that, he shut himself off from the world. He buried his emotions under work, money, and control. And when he couldn't control something, he destroyed it with his words. The mansion staff learned to walk quietly, speak softly, and never make eye contact unless spoken to. Even then, their voices shook. One maid fainted after being yelled at. A butler resigned after just 3 days. The head housekeeper had changed 5 times in 1 year. No one lasted. The mansion became famous in the city, not for its beauty, but for the fear it carried. Alexander didn't notice the fear. Or maybe he did and didn't care. He believed fear kept people in line. To him, emotions were weaknesses, and kindness was a lie people used to get what they wanted. He trusted no one. Not employees, not partners, not even himself. At night, when the house was silent, Alexander sat alone in his office, staring at old photos he pretended not to care about. Sometimes he poured himself a drink and stared out the window for hours. The anger that ruled him during the day turned into a deep loneliness at night. But he never admitted it. He never cried. He never spoke about the past. He simply woke up the next morning and became the furious billionaire again. Rumors spread across the city. "Don't work for Crowe," people warned. "He will break you." The mansion became a place no one wanted to go, no matter how good the pay was. But money talks, and sometimes desperate people listen. And that's how, one ordinary morning, 2 new names were added to the staff list. Alexander didn't know it yet, but the arrival of those 2 names was the beginning of something no one expected. The mansion that had swallowed so many people was about to face the one thing it had never seen before. Courage. Patience. And 2 hearts that refused to be broken. This was the life of the man everyone feared. A billionaire who ruled with anger, lived with silence, and believed nothing could change him. He was wrong. And the story of his change was just beginning. The morning the twins arrived, the mansion felt different, though no one could explain why. The sky was cloudy, the air was heavy, and even the long gates of Alexander Crow's mansion seemed to stand more still than usual. Staff members moved faster than normal, afraid of being noticed. Everyone knew a new day with the furious billionaire could bring new anger, new shouting, and new resignations. Lily and Rose Carter stood at the front gate with a single suitcase between them. They looked the same, but they were not the same. Lily was calm and quiet, the kind of person who listened more than she spoke. Rose was bold and curious, her eyes always searching, always questioning. Life had not been kind to them. They had lost their parents young, moved from one small job to another, and learned early that survival meant patience. This job was not a choice. It was a need. When they were let inside, the size of the mansion shocked them. Long hallways, tall ceilings, and cold marble floors made every step echo. The house felt like it was watching them. The head housekeeper barely looked at them as she handed them their uniforms. Her voice was tired, her eyes empty, like someone who had given up hope a long time ago. "Do your work, keep quiet, and don't look at him unless he speaks to you," she said quickly, then walked away. That was all the warning they got. The twins exchanged a look. They had faced worse than a bad boss. They tied their aprons, took a deep breath, and stepped into their first task. Cleaning the East Wing. Only an hour later, they heard the sound everyone feared. Heavy footsteps. Fast. Angry. The air changed. Lily's hands froze. Rose swallowed hard. Then he appeared. Alexander Crow walked into the hallway like a storm. His eyes were sharp, his face hard, and his presence filled the entire space. He stopped when he saw them. New faces. He hated new faces. "Who hired you?" he demanded. Rose opened her mouth, but Lily gently touched her arm and spoke instead. "We're the new maids, sir. We started this morning." Alexander's eyes narrowed. He scanned their work, then pointed at a small mark on the window. "That's dirty. Clean it again." It was already clean, but Lily nodded without arguing. Rose clenched her fists, but said nothing. Alexander watched, waiting for tears, excuses, or fear. He got none. When Lily cleaned the window again, slowly and carefully, his anger had nowhere to go. He left without another word, confused and irritated. The rest of the day went the same way. He found small problems and threw sharp words at them, but the twins didn't break. They didn't cry. They didn't quit. At lunch, other staff members stared at them like they were crazy. "You won't last," one whispered. Rose smiled. "We will." That night, the twins sat in their tiny shared room, exhausted but calm. Rose laughed softly. "He's just a sad man pretending to be powerful," she said. Lily didn't laugh. "He's hurting," she replied. "And people who hurt try to make others feel small." The next morning, something strange happened. Alexander noticed the dining table was set differently. Simple. Warm. Almost human. He didn't shout. He didn't throw anything. He just sat there, staring at the plates like they were a memory he couldn't touch. For the first time in years, his anger paused. Day by day, the twins worked quietly, but something began to change. The staff started smiling again. The house felt lighter. And Alexander, though he hated it, started looking for the twins without realizing it. No one knew it yet, but the impossible had already begun. By now, everyone in the mansion was whispering about the twins. No one understood how they were still here. 3 days had passed, and Lily and Rose Carter had not quit, cried, or been fired. For the staff, it was shocking. For Alexander Crow, it was annoying. He hated things he couldn't control, and the twins were becoming exactly that. That morning, he woke up angrier than usual. A business deal had collapsed overnight, costing him millions. His phone kept buzzing, and every message made his jaw tighten. By the time he walked into the mansion hallway, his patience was gone. He saw the twins cleaning the grand staircase together, moving in perfect rhythm. The sight irritated him for reasons he didn't understand. It looked peaceful, and peace had no place in his world. "Stop," he barked. Both twins froze. Lily lowered her cloth. Rose straightened her back. "Who told you to clean here?" he demanded. "The schedule, sir," Lily answered calmly, holding up the paper. Alexander didn't even look at it. "This is not how I want it done." Rose finally spoke, her voice steady but firm. "Sir, we've cleaned this staircase 3 times already today. It's spotless." Silence filled the hall. No one had ever spoken back to him like that. The air became heavy. Staff nearby held their breath, waiting for the explosion. They had seen it before, the shouting, the insults, the threats. Alexander stepped closer, his eyes dark. "Do you think you know better than me?" Rose felt her heart race, but she didn't move. "I think we're doing our job well," she said. Lily quickly stepped in. "If you want it different, please show us. We'll fix it." Her words were simple, respectful, but strong. And something strange happened. Alexander's anger hesitated. No fear. No begging. No weakness. Just calm. "Do it again," he said finally, turning away. They did. Slowly. Carefully. Perfectly. When Alexander returned, he found nothing to complain about. The staircase shined. The twins stood quietly, waiting. He wanted to shout, but the words wouldn't come. For the first time in years, he felt confused instead of angry. That afternoon, Alexander created a test. A cruel one. He ordered the twins to clean the old West Wing, a place no one touched anymore. It was dusty, dark, and full of memories. Staff avoided it because Alexander never went there himself. Sending them there was his way of breaking them. When the twins opened the door, the smell of old air filled their lungs. Broken furniture, covered mirrors, and forgotten rooms waited for them. Rose frowned. "He wants us gone," she whispered. "Then we stay," Lily replied. As they cleaned, they found old photographs. A younger Alexander. Smiling. Standing with a woman and a child. The twins didn't say anything, but they understood. This was where his anger was born. Hours passed. Their arms hurt. Their clothes were dirty. But they didn't stop. That evening, Alexander went to the West Wing without thinking. He froze when he saw the lights on. The room was clean. Warm. The dust was gone. The past, for a moment, didn't feel so heavy. He felt something twist in his chest. Anger tried to rise, but sadness came first. "Why are you still here?" he asked quietly. Rose looked at him. "Because someone has to be." He turned away before they could see his eyes. That night, Alexander couldn't sleep. For the first time in years, his anger had failed him. And it terrified him. The twins had not only survived his fury. They had faced it. And they had won. By the 4th week, the mansion no longer felt like a battlefield. It still held silence, but the silence was different now. It was not sharp or frightening. It was soft, thoughtful, almost waiting. The staff noticed it, even if they were afraid to say it out loud. And Alexander Crow felt it too, though he fought it every day. Lily and Rose were no longer just maids. They moved through the house like quiet light, fixing things no one noticed were broken. A crooked painting, a broken chair, a cold room that needed warmth. But the most broken thing in the mansion was still the man himself, and slowly, without force, the twins began to see the pain behind his fury. It started with small moments. One morning, Lily found Alexander standing in the hallway, staring at an old clock that no longer worked. He didn't hear her. He didn't shout. He just stood there, lost. When he noticed her, he stepped back like a man caught doing something wrong. She didn't ask questions. She simply cleaned the clock, wound it, and placed it back. The ticking sound followed Alexander all day, and it made him restless. Another day, Rose saw him sitting alone at the long dining table, untouched food in front of him. The anger was gone from his face, replaced by something empty. She placed a cup of tea beside him without a word. He didn't thank her, but he drank it. For the first time in years, someone had noticed his silence instead of his anger. The twins began to understand something important. Alexander was not cruel because he enjoyed it. He was cruel because he was afraid. Afraid of remembering. Afraid of losing again. Afraid of letting anyone close enough to matter. Late one afternoon, Lily was asked to clean the private office. It was a room no one liked entering. The walls were dark, the air heavy, and the desk was always messy, like a storm lived inside it. As she cleaned, she found a small box hidden behind some files. Inside were old letters, folded and refolded so many times they were soft. She didn't read them, but she knew they were important. She placed the box back gently, exactly where she found it. When Alexander came in later, he stopped. The desk was clean. The box was in place. The window was open, letting in fresh air. His chest tightened. Someone had been careful with his pain. That night, a storm hit the city. Thunder shook the mansion, and lightning filled the halls with white light. Alexander hated storms. They reminded him of that night. The night everything ended. He sat alone in his room, hands shaking, memories screaming. There was a soft knock. Lily stood at the door, holding a candle. The power might go out, she said gently. I thought you might want light. He wanted to yell. He wanted to tell her to leave. Instead, he nodded. She placed the candle and walked away. The storm passed, but something inside Alexander cracked open. He realized the twins were not afraid of him. They were not trying to change him. They were simply seeing him. And that scared him more than anger ever did. The next day, he did something no one expected. He spoke. I lost my family, he said suddenly, standing in the kitchen where Rose was working. The word surprised even him. Rose froze, then slowly turned. I know, she said quietly. You don't have to tell us more. He nodded, his jaw tight. That was all he could manage. From that day on, his anger came less often. When it did, it passed faster. The staff noticed. The house breathed easier. And the twins, without even realizing it, had done the impossible. They had found the man hiding behind the fury. But healing is never simple. And the hardest part was still waiting. The trouble didn't arrive loudly. It came quietly, like a shadow slipping under the door, unnoticed at first. But when it finally showed its face, it threatened to destroy everything Alexander Crow had built. One morning, the mansion was filled with tension. Phones rang non-stop, assistants whispered in corners, and cars arrived one after another at the front gate. A major deal had collapsed, investors were pulling out, and the media was circling like hungry birds. Alexander's empire was shaking, and for the first time in his life, money couldn't fix it quickly. Alexander locked himself in his office. Hours passed, then a full day. He didn't eat. He didn't answer calls. The furious billionaire who once ruled with shouting now sat in silence, staring at a screen filled with bad news. His anger had no direction. His power felt useless. The staff panicked. Some started packing their things, afraid the mansion would soon fall apart like the business. Others waited, frozen, not knowing what to do. It was the same pattern as before, when Alexander fell, everyone ran. But Lily and Rose didn't run. They stood in the kitchen, reading the room, listening to whispers, watching fear grow. Then Rose said something simple, "If he breaks now, he won't get back up." Lily nodded. "Then we don't let him break." They didn't ask permission. They didn't wait for orders. They began doing things no maids had ever done. Rose organized the staff, calming them, giving small tasks to keep the house running. Lily prepared food and left it outside Alexander's office door, again and again, until he finally opened it. He looked tired, older, smaller. "You should eat," she said gently. "Go away," he whispered. She didn't. That night, Rose sat outside his office with a stack of papers she didn't fully understand, but she sorted them anyway. Numbers, meetings, schedules. It wasn't her job. But it was necessary. Alexander watched from the doorway, confused and irritated. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "Because no one else is," Rose replied. For the first time, Alexander felt something he hadn't felt in years: support. Real support. Not bought. Not forced. Given freely. The next morning, Lily walked into the office with coffee and a simple plan. "You need rest. You need to face them, one by one. We'll handle the house." He laughed bitterly. "You think you can fix this?" "No," she said honestly. "But we can help you survive it." Something inside him shifted. He nodded. Over the next days, the twins became his anchor. They reminded him to eat, to sleep, to breathe. They stopped the staff from quitting. They answered phones, arranged meetings, and kept the mansion calm while the world outside burned. Alexander faced investors with shaking hands, but he faced them. He spoke without shouting. He listened. And slowly, the storm began to slow. One evening, after a long day of fighting, he sat in the garden with the twins nearby, the air quiet, the sky orange. "Why?" he asked suddenly. "Why help me?" Rose smiled softly. "Because we know what it's like to lose everything." Lily added, "And because no one helped us when we did." Alexander looked at them, truly looked at them, and for the first time, his eyes filled with tears. He turned away, ashamed, but grateful. The impossible was happening. The furious billionaire was no longer fighting alone. And that made all the difference. But storms always leave damage behind. And the hardest test was still coming. The breaking point came on a night that was too quiet. No phones ringing, no staff whispering, no storms outside. Just silence. The kind of silence that makes thoughts louder and fears heavier. Alexander Crow sat alone in his office, staring at the same page for hours, his mind spinning. The crisis was not over, and the pressure was crushing him slowly. When Lily knocked, he didn't answer. When she knocked again, he finally shouted, "Go away." But she opened the door anyway. "You haven't eaten," she said calmly, placing a tray on the table. That small act, the refusal to be afraid, snapped something inside him. "Get out," he roared, slamming his fist on the desk. Papers flew everywhere. His face twisted with rage. "I told you to leave me alone. You think you can fix me? You think you're special?" Lily didn't move, but her eyes filled with tears. She had stood strong for weeks, but this was different. This time, his anger cut deep. Rose ran in after hearing the noise. "Stop," she shouted. "You're hurting her." Alexander turned, his eyes burning. "You both think you're better than everyone else. You think you saved me. You're just maids. Nothing more." The words hung in the air like poison. Lily stepped back, shaking. She placed the tray down slowly, then whispered, "I'm done." She turned and walked out, her shoulders trembling. The door closed softly, but the sound was louder than any shout. Rose stared at Alexander, her eyes full of anger and disappointment. "You're the loneliest man I've ever met," she said. Then she followed her sister. The mansion went silent. That night, Alexander sat alone, surrounded by the mess he had made. His anger faded, leaving only regret. For the first time, he had pushed away people who truly cared. He wanted to call them back, but pride held his tongue. So he sat there until morning, broken and empty. Lily packed her bag at sunrise. She couldn't stay. Not after that. Rose tried to stop her, but Lily shook her head. "If we stay, we disappear," she said softly. "He has to face himself now." Rose watched her sister leave the mansion with tears in her eyes. Then she made a choice of her own. She stayed. When Alexander saw Rose still working that morning, his chest tightened. "Where is she?" he asked quietly. "She's gone," Rose replied. "Because of you." He nodded, the truth hitting him harder than any loss. For the first time in his life, he didn't shout. He didn't blame anyone. He went to his room and locked the door. For 2 days, Alexander didn't come out. No meetings. No calls. No orders. The staff feared the worst. But inside that room, something different was happening. He wasn't angry. He was finally feeling. On the 3rd day, he opened the door and walked into the sunlight like a man seeing it for the first time. He found Rose in the kitchen. "I was wrong," he said, his voice low. "I broke everything." Rose looked at him, tired but honest. "You can't fix the past," she said. "But you can stop destroying the present." He nodded. "Help me." And that was the moment the furious billionaire truly fell apart. But sometimes, falling apart is how a person finally becomes whole. And this fall was only the beginning of his redemption. Alexander Crow's transformation didn't happen overnight, but it began the moment he truly admitted he needed help. The mansion, once a fortress of fear, slowly began to feel like a home again, not a home of perfection, but a home of life, of people, of care. Rose stayed, as promised, guiding Alexander through the chaos he had created, while Lily, though still away, kept a quiet watch over him, offering support when it was needed most. The first real test came with the staff. After weeks of running themselves ragged, living under the shadow of Alexander's fury, many were still hesitant to return. Some doubted whether the billionaire had changed at all. But Rose, patient and unyielding, encouraged them. "He's different now," she said simply. "He's willing to listen." Slowly, people trickled back, chefs, cleaners, assistants, all returning to a mansion that no longer felt like a battlefield. Alexander's mornings were different now. He no longer woke with anger gnawing at him. Instead, he allowed himself small moments of calm, something he hadn't done in years. He greeted staff politely. He asked about their families. Sometimes, he even smiled, though it always felt strange to him at first. Rose watched from the sidelines, guiding him gently, reminding him that change was a process, not a single decision. But the most profound changes were inside him. Alexander began confronting the memories he had buried. He spoke about the accident that had destroyed his family, about the loneliness that had followed. He admitted that his fury had been a shield, a way to protect himself from the pain he couldn't face. And as he spoke, Rose listened, never judging, never interrupting. Her patience and presence became a lifeline. One afternoon, Alexander decided to reach out to Lily. He had resisted for weeks, unsure if she would forgive him for leaving so abruptly. But when he called, Lily answered. Their conversation was quiet, full of pauses, full of honesty. She didn't scold him. She didn't lecture him. She simply reminded him that the twins had always believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself. With both twins now helping him in their own ways, Alexander began taking real steps in his business. He faced the investors personally, apologized for mismanagement, and presented a plan to stabilize the empire. His demeanor was calm, composed, and surprisingly humble. The boardroom, once a place of tension and fear, now felt like a space of collaboration and respect. At home, the mansion changed too. Rooms that were once silent and cold now carried warmth. Laughter returned slowly, beginning with small jokes and light-hearted comments. The staff, encouraged by Alexander's transformation and the twins' guidance, worked together instead of in fear. Even the old West Wing, once avoided like a tomb, became a place where sunlight streamed in and plants grew. The most remarkable change was the connection Alexander began to feel with the twins. He no longer saw them as employees. He saw them as the two people who had saved him, not from failure, but from himself. He began trusting them, asking for advice, and even sharing small moments of life he had kept hidden for so long. Lily's calm and wisdom balanced Rose's courage and intuition, creating a steady support that Alexander had never experienced before. By the end of the month, Alexander could finally walk through his mansion without tension following him. His staff no longer flinched at his presence. The house no longer felt like a prison. And Alexander himself, the once furious billionaire, had discovered the quiet strength that comes not from control, money, or fear, but from vulnerability, trust, and human connection. The impossible had happened. The twins had not only survived his anger, they had reshaped him. And now, Alexander Crowe was a man learning to live, to lead, and to love in ways he had never imagined possible. Years passed, but the memory of those first days never left Alexander Crowe. The mansion, once a fortress of fear and silence, had become a place of life, laughter, and quiet strength. What had begun as sheer survival for Lily and Rose had turned into a legacy they had unknowingly built. And Alexander, the once furious billionaire, had finally learned what it meant to truly live. The twins, now grown beyond the roles of mere maids, had transformed the mansion and its master in ways no one could have predicted. They had stayed not for money, not for prestige, but for a man who had no one else to see him as human. In return, Alexander had learned to open his heart, to face the painful memories he had buried, and to accept love and trust again. The mansion became a hub of calm energy. Staff moved with purpose, not fear. Employees who had once trembled in Alexander's presence now laughed at his dry jokes and felt comfortable enough to bring their own ideas. Even the media, once waiting to catch the billionaire at his worst, reported on a man who had changed, a story that had captured the city's imagination. Rumors that no one could survive him had vanished, replaced by awe at the transformation. Lily and Rose, though still deeply connected to the mansion, decided it was time to step into the next chapter of their lives. They had their own dreams, long postponed, and the world was finally ready for them. They planned a small farewell, quiet and private, but Alexander insisted he attend. When they stood in the grand hallway, luggage in hand, he felt a strange mix of pride and loss. "You've done what no one else could," Alexander said quietly, his voice full of emotion he had never shown before. "You didn't just survive me. You saved me, from myself." Lily smiled, calm as ever. "You saved yourself," she replied. "We just helped you see it." Rose hugged him tightly, a gesture Alexander had rarely allowed. For a moment, he felt the warmth of family again, a feeling he hadn't known in years. He realized that the mansion, his empire, even his wealth, had always been empty without connection. And now, thanks to the twins, he understood what mattered most. The twins left the mansion the next morning, stepping into a world that had waited long enough for their courage and determination. Alexander watched them go, standing tall in the sunlight streaming through the gates. He knew he would never forget their kindness, their resilience, or the impossible way they had changed him. Over time, Alexander's life continued to evolve. He became a mentor, a leader, and eventually, a man capable of love and compassion. He reconnected with family members he had long avoided, repaired relationships with friends, and even started initiatives to help others who had faced fear and loss. The mansion no longer symbolized anger or loneliness, it had become a home, a place where people could grow and feel safe. Whenever Alexander walked through the halls, he remembered Lily and Rose in small ways. A freshly cleaned window here, a carefully folded towel there, a small note reminding him to breathe or eat. Their presence, though gone, lingered like a quiet song, a reminder that even the hardest hearts could change with patience, courage, and care. The city still talked about him, but now for different reasons. No longer the feared billionaire, Alexander became an example of transformation, a story of redemption and the power of human connection. People said he had been changed by the twins, and it was true, but more importantly, he had chosen to change. Years later, he would tell the story to trusted friends, quietly and without ego. "Two girls came into my life when no one else could stand me," he said. "They didn't bow, they didn't fear, and they didn't try to fix me. They just saw me, and that was enough to change everything." And so, the impossible was no longer impossible. A furious billionaire had been softened, a mansion that had trapped so many now welcomed all, and the legacy of the Maid twins lived on, not in wealth or power, but in the hearts they touched, the lives they saved, and the man they helped become whole. The story ended not with riches or titles, but with humanity restored, love remembered, and the knowledge that courage and compassion could change even the most hardened soul.